I think Hoja Effendi's inspiration for education, for interfaith dialogue, and also for service to our fellow human beings is the beautiful part of his Met. His Met movement, even after we started Atlas, but I kind of experienced it when I was in Turkey. Dialogue and also for service to our fellow human beings is the I'm Kathy Eustis, and I'm one of the co-founders of Atlas Foundation in New Orleans back in 2002. I didn't know about the Hizmet movement even after we started Atlas, but I kind of experienced it when I was in Turkey, and I didn't know it had a name or that there was a group or there was even a purpose. But we traveled all over, and everywhere we went, people were so kind and so generous and so open-hearted and also devout in their religion. This was my first exposure to Islam. So I think I was experiencing Hizmet, but I didn't know it had a name at that time. It's been an incredibly beautiful part of my life. When we first started Atlas, I had no idea really where we were going with it. I thought the emphasis might have been just on interfaith, but since then it's expanded and it's become much more inclusive, and it's been a very beautiful and important part of my life. I had the privilege of meeting Mr. غولن back in May of 2005, and it was a time of reflection for me because I spent 2 days at his place in Pennsylvania before I got to meet him. So I was reading and trying to read some of his works, and I was familiar with some of his poems. I had a meeting with him face-to-face, and my regret is that I couldn't speak Turkish because I had so many questions to ask him, but somehow we communicated through an interpreter who came with me, one of our Atlas friends. And in his eyes reminded me of my father's eyes, and he asked beautiful questions about my family, and I asked him about his hopes for what we could do in New Orleans as Atlas. It was a very unforgettable 15 minutes, and before that even, I forgot that he was doing an afternoon session with a group of people. The men were downstairs and the women were upstairs, and I had just arrived, and we raced up the hill, went up into the I guess the big room where he was speaking, and I had no idea what he was saying, but the women were taking notes, and it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, and I saw in his eyes compassion and also just great fervor in what he was saying. And so afterwards I asked one of the ladies what he was talking about, and she said he was talking about family and the importance of the family unit and how important that was to society, that if you had a strong family, it spread to society. I thought that was lovely. I wished I could have understood more. I think Hoja Effendi's inspiration for education, for interfaith dialogue, and also for service to our fellow human beings is the beautiful part of his Met. And I think it continues following his Hoja Effendi's through his example, and even just by his initiating dialogue with leaders of other faiths. That was probably a very radical thing to do when he did this, and yet he was courageous enough to take that step, and so that's been very inspirational. I think the schools that he's inspired throughout the world have been an incredible contribution to mankind, and I was fortunate enough to teach some of the students from some of these schools in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, and they came beautifully educated, lovely addition to my ESL classes. The Hizmet movement represents Islam to me in that it represents the core of Islam. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of Muslims from many different countries who are dedicated to the cause of Hizmet. And I think the best way it represents Islam is in service and caring for our fellow human beings, educating them, bringing people together to try and understand each other better, and to respect the differences, but also try and find the common ground. So I think the core of any religion tries to unite human beings rather than push them apart by ideological differences. And Hizmet does a beautiful job of this to me. I'm not as familiar with other civic service organizations as I am with Hizmet, so it might be hard to compare or tell you the differences. However, I think Hizmet does a beautiful job of one-on-one. Every person feels important, and every person is included in all of our programs, all of the activities that we do. And it's far-reaching, it's worldwide. And I know that I could travel to any country, and if I needed help or wanted a place to stay, I could ask one of my friends, who do you know in, I don't know where, let's see, Madrid, Spain. And there would be a connection. There would be someone there that I know would know about the movement, and I could feel at home. I think Hizmet's interfaith programs are a very important part of the movement. When we first started Atlas and we were going to be an interfaith organization, I was terribly intimidated. I had no idea how to do interfaith dialogue. And I quickly learned that you don't do interfaith dialogue. You bring people together through different activities, and dialogue happens. And the best way in New Orleans, I know, is to prepare a meal, because people love to eat and love to share good food. And so I find that when you sit at a table with someone from different background, different faith, different culture, all of a sudden we're talking about our families or our cities or our faith, and we get to know each other, and the aspect of the other disappears. We become friends. And so I found that through certain activities, not just eating, we had programs where people are invited, like the Whirling Dervishes, or iftars that we provided at universities and churches throughout the city, and a friendship dinner every year. These were beautiful ways to create dialogue. So it went past interfaith dialogue, it just went to dialogue in general. I love Hizmet's emphasis on education. I think it's critical. I think to have an educated populace is to have one that can take care of their future and build a better world. When you have uneducated people, they can be dominated. I did have the privilege of visiting a school, the Horizon International High School in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I spent an hour or two in the afternoon with some of the high school boys who got to ask me anything they wanted to about New Orleans, about myself, about my faith, and I got to ask them questions. And I was so impressed by their knowledge of so many different things, and they were a lovely group of men. And I'm still in touch with a few of them today, so I won't forget that experience. I think Hizmet's charity work is very important. We had a fundraiser here in New Orleans a few years ago after the Japanese earthquake. I know that we were able to present a check to the Consul General of Japan to use towards aid there. And also after the tsunami, we held, I think we prepared food and sold handmade Turkish items and artifacts, and also earned money for that cause. I think it's very important. I know there are many organizations that donate money and help in these causes, but it's not just that, it's the effort of uniting together to help out another country or other people in need. So it's not just the outcome of what we do, but it's the knitting together of people to work towards this effort that's important. Sometimes it really does feel too good to be true, but I would tell them to please come and join us, come and do an activity with us, come and see what we're about. They won't believe the beauty in this Hizmet movement until they become a participant. And for me, personally, I can say it's expanded my world, my view, everything. I've always been interested in foreign countries and different cultures and different faiths, but not only have I learned about that, but I've also learned a lot about myself. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful 13 years, and I'll continue until I can't. So I say, come join us. If you don't believe it, come see.